To the happy couple who always loved playing in the dirt. The sound of champagne glasses clinking filled the air. My sister, Veronica's voice, cut through the noise at the reception hall. It was sweet, but sharp enough to sting. The laughter that followed felt like a slap. My face burned as all 200 wedding guests turned to look at me and Leo. My name is Judy, and this was supposed to be the best day of my life. I should have known Veronica wouldn't let my wedding pass without reminding everyone where I stood in our family. She looked perfect in her fancy bridesmaid dress, holding court at the main table. I sat there in my grandmother's old wedding dress, trying to hide my tears. "Judy, dear, smile," my mother, Clara, whispered beside me. Her perfect fingers dug into my arm. "People are watching." Of course they were watching. They'd watched my whole life, waiting to see which Miller sister would mess up first. Spoiler, it was always going to be me. Leo's rough hand found mine under the table. His thumb drew small circles on my palm. When I looked at him, his kind brown eyes were calm. He wasn't bothered by the snickers around us. "Let them laugh," he whispered, his breath tickling my ear. "We know what we have." I loved this man so much. Even though he was covered in dust from the fields he'd worked that morning, he was more real than anyone in this room of expensive suits and fake smiles. "I still can't believe you're marrying a farmer," my youngest sister, Lily, whispered, sitting in the empty chair next to me. At 27, she was the peacemaker, always trying to smooth things over. "I mean, I think it's sweet, but Mom's been taking antacids all week." "Thanks for the pep talk," I said, watching Veronica work the crowd like she was running for mayor. At 31, she was the perfect golden child. She had a big job in the city and a husband who wore expensive suits and talked about money at parties. "That's not what I meant," Lily said quickly. "Ladies and gentlemen," my father, Arthur's voice, boomed through the microphone, cutting through the chatter. He stood at the podium, his silver hair neat, his face showing a mix of sadness and disappointment. My stomach dropped. This wouldn't be good. "I'd like to say a few words about my daughter Judy," he began. I saw Veronica smirk behind her champagne glass. While her sisters focused on their careers and big achievements, Judy chose a different path, a simpler path. The word simpler hung in the air like a judgment. I felt Leo's hand tighten on mine. "She's chosen to marry Leo, a man who works with his hands and knows the value of hard work." My father's pause felt planned, thoughtful. "We wish them happiness in their humble life together." The applause was polite but weak. I saw my mother dabbing her eyes with a tissue, but I wasn't sure if they were tears of joy or sadness. "Your dad's really laying it on thick," Leo said quietly, his voice steady, despite the insult hidden in the wedding wishes. "He's been practicing that speech for weeks," I replied, watching Veronica lean over to whisper something to her husband, Mark. They both laughed. I didn't need to hear the words to know they were about me. This was my family. The people who should have been celebrating with me were treating my wedding like a funeral for my future. Everything I'd ever done, my college degree, my teaching awards, the small business I'd built selling fresh produce, all of it was ignored because I'd chosen love over status. "You know what?" I said, standing up so fast my chair scraped the floor. The sound cut through the chatter, and everyone looked at me again. I raised my water glass, because of course I was too practical to waste good champagne on a toast, and looked straight at my sister. "To family," I said, my voice clear in the quiet room, "and to learning who really has your back when it matters." Veronica's smile flickered for a moment, but she quickly recovered, raising her glass with the rest of the room. The toast felt like a line drawn in the sand, though I don't think anyone else realized it yet. As I sat back down, Leo leaned over and whispered, "That's my girl." I had no idea how true those words would turn out to be. 3 years later, I stood in Veronica's fancy tiled entryway, holding a dish of food that probably cost less than her doormat. The yearly Miller family barbecue was in full swing. I could already hear the familiar sounds of my childhood: clinking glasses, forced laughter, and the subtle game of trying to be better than everyone else, disguised as conversation. Judy! My mother's voice rang out as I stepped onto the perfect back patio. There you are! We were just talking about the big house Mark bought in the countryside. Of course they were. Veronica floated over in a flowing white dress that probably cost more than my monthly food budget. Her smile was as perfect as her garden. "Oh, you brought food," she said, looking at my dish like it might carry a disease. "How thoughtful." "Green bean casserole," I said, setting it down on the catering table next to the fancy food. "Is it organic?" Mark appeared beside his wife, holding a drink. His shirt was so crisp it could cut paper. Or just basic? The question hung in the air, and several family friends turned to listen. I felt that familiar heat rise in my neck. "It's homegrown," Leo said quietly, stepping up beside me. His jeans were clean but worn, his shirt simple cotton. Next to Mark's expensive clothes, he looked like he'd walked in from another world. Right, Mark nodded with too much interest. "The farming thing, how's that going? Still playing in the dirt?" "We're doing well," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "The farm has made money for 2 years now." "Veronica." The sound was like wind chimes in a storm. "Profitable? Oh, honey, that's sweet. Mark just finished a deal worth more than your little farm probably makes in 10 years. "Actually," my father cut in, walking over with his drink, "I've been meaning to ask about that. This farming idea of yours, when are you planning to do something more important with your lives?" "Arthur," my mother warned, but her tone suggested she wanted to hear the answer too. "We're happy," Leo said simply. "The work is good, honest work." "Honest work," Mark repeated, swirling his drink. "That's one way to put it. Though I have to say, watching you two at family events is like watching a nature show. Here we see the simple country folk in their natural home." The group around us chuckled. I saw Lily wince from across the patio, but she didn't say anything. "At least we sleep well at night," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. The laughter stopped. Mark's smile tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" Veronica asked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just that physical work makes you tired." But the damage was done. I'd crossed some invisible line, and everyone could feel it. "Well," my mother said with forced cheerfulness, "who wants to see the new pool house?" The group moved away, following Veronica toward the newest part of her property. I started to follow, but Leo caught my arm. "I'm going to check on the truck," he said. "Make sure we didn't leave the windows down." I knew he just needed air. These gatherings were harder on him than he let on, watching his wife get picked apart by her own family while he stood there unable to stop it. "I'll come with you," I said, but he shook his head. "Stay. Enjoy your family." The word enjoy carried a weight we both understood. I found myself alone by the pool, watching the sun reflect off water that probably cost more to keep clean than we spent on food. The sound of laughter drifted from the pool house tour. I wondered what it would feel like to belong in that group instead of always standing on the outside looking in. "They're being awful today," Lily said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of wine. "Today?" I took the glass gratefully. "This is just a normal Tuesday for them." "It's not always like this, is it? When was the last time anyone in this family asked about my life without it being a setup for a joke?" Lily was quiet for a moment. "Things have been tense lately with Mark's work. I mean, Veronica's been stressed." "Stressed about what?" "I probably shouldn't say anything." She glanced around, then leaned closer. "Some of his investments haven't been going well. Big ones. Veronica's been making comments about having to change their lifestyle." Before I could respond, Veronica's voice cut across the patio like a blade. "Judy, come settle a debate for us." I walked back to the group, wine glass in hand, already getting ready. "We were just talking about career paths, and I was telling everyone how you've really found your calling. I mean, not everyone can handle the brainy demands of, what do you call it? Small-scale farming." The group laughed right on cue. "Though I have to ask," she continued, stepping closer, Don't you ever wonder what you could have done if you'd really tried? I mean, really tried, instead of settling for this quaint little life? The words hit like punches. Every doubt I'd ever had about my choices, every moment of uncertainty, all wrapped up in my sister's perfect cruelty. I opened my mouth to respond, but Veronica wasn't finished. I'm just saying, some of us dream bigger than vegetable gardens and local fairs. Real life happens in the city, not in whatever little bubble you've created for yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the people who'd been laughing looked uncomfortable now. I set down my wine glass with a steady hand. "You're right," I said quietly. "Real life does happen, and sometimes it happens in ways you never expect." 6 months after the barbecue from hell, I noticed the cracks starting to show. It began with missed phone calls. My parents, who used to check in weekly with updates about Veronica's latest successes, suddenly went silent. When I did catch them, the conversations felt forced, like they were reading from a script with half the pages missing. "How's Veronica doing?" I asked during one especially awkward call with my mother. "Oh, you know, Veronica, always busy, always working on something big." The pause that followed was long enough to drive a truck through. "And Mark, he's fine. Listen, honey, I have to run. Your father's calling me." Click. I stared at the phone, frowning. In 30 years, my mother had never cut a conversation short unless someone was literally bleeding. The next warning sign came at Lily's birthday dinner. We met at a small Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, which should have been my first clue. The Miller family didn't do nothing fancy. "Where's everyone else?" I asked as Lily slid into the booth across from me and Leo. "Mom and Dad had something come up. Veronica and Mark are dealing with work stuff." "Work stuff on a Saturday night?" Lily picked at her breadstick, avoiding my eyes. "Things have been complicated lately." "What kind of complicated?" "I probably shouldn't," Lily whispers. I leaned forward. "What's going on?" She glanced around the restaurant like she was checking for spies, then lowered her voice. "Mark's company is in trouble. Big trouble. Some kind of investment plan that went wrong." I felt a little flutter in my chest. Not quite happiness, but something close to it. I pushed the feeling down, ashamed of myself. How bad? Bad enough that they had to put the countryside house on the market and the boat, and Veronica's been calling around asking family members for short-term loans. The flutter grew stronger. I took a sip of water to hide my face. "Have they asked you for money?" Leo asked quietly. "Not yet, but I think that's only because I don't have any to give." Lily finally met my eyes. "They haven't called you, have they?" "No," I said. "But then again, we're just simple country folk. What would we know about real money?" Lily winced. "You heard about that. I was there, remember? Front row seat to the Veronica show. She's been different lately, stressed, snapping at everyone. Even the golden child has bad days, I guess." We ate in relative silence after that, but I could feel Leo watching me. He knew me well enough to see the thoughts turning in my head. Later that week, we were picking late summer tomatoes when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Judy." The voice was shaky, older than I remembered. "It's your mother." "Mom, are you okay? You sound—" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. Listen, I was wondering, could you come by the house this weekend? There's something we need to discuss as a family." The word family sent a chill down my spine. In Miller family talk, something we need to discuss as a family was never good news. "What kind of something?" "It's better if we talk in person. Can you come Saturday afternoon around 2?" I looked at Leo, who was pretending not to listen while loading tomatoes into crates. His shoulders were tense. "I guess so. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself and Leo, of course." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone. "Family meeting?" Leo asked without looking up. "Sounds like it." He straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "About what?" She wouldn't say, but given what Lily told us, they're going to ask us for money. It wasn't a question. We both knew it was true. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, while Leo's breathing became steady beside me. Part of me, a bigger part than I wanted to admit, was almost excited. After years of being treated like the family disappointment, they were finally going to need something from me. The irony was sweet. All those comments about our simple little life and playing in the dirt, and now they were going to come begging to the farm girl they'd spent decades mocking. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being 7 years old and desperately wanting Veronica to include me in her games, felt sick at the thought of my family's pain. Saturday morning arrived, gray and drizzly, matching my mood. Leo was unusually quiet as we drove to my parents' house, his hands steady on the wheel, but his jaw tight. "Whatever they ask," he said as we pulled into the familiar driveway, "remember that you don't owe them anything." "I know." "Do you? Because you have a soft heart, Judy, and they know how to use that against you." I looked at the house where I'd grown up, with its perfect lawn and neat shutters. It looked smaller than I remembered, less grand. I'll be fine. But as we walked up the front steps, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Emergency family meeting. Please come. We need you." It was from Veronica, the same sister who'd spent years telling me I'd never amount to anything, was asking for my help. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and rang the doorbell, my heart beating finessed. Time to see what real life looked like when it came knocking on the farm girl's door. The living room felt like a courtroom when we walked in. Everyone was already there, arranged in a careful half circle, like they'd been planning this ambush for weeks. My parents sat on the couch, looking older than I remembered. Veronica sat on the edge of the armchair, her expensive clothes wrinkled, her usual perfect calm broken around the edges. Mark stood by the window, his back to us, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Only Lily looked truly uncomfortable, shooting me a sorry glance from her spot on the small seat. "Judy, Leo," my father said, gesturing to the 2 chairs they'd clearly placed for us. We sat down, and I immediately felt like I was on trial. "So," I said, breaking the heavy silence, "what's this about?" My mother twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. "We wanted to talk to you about the family situation." "What situation?" Mark finally turned around, and I was shocked by how tired and worn out he looked. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something desperate and angry. "Mark," Veronica warned, but her voice lacked its usual power. "No, I'm done pretending," he continued. "Your sister told you about our problems, didn't she? About the investments?" I glanced at Lily, who was studying her hands like they held the secrets of the universe. "She mentioned you were having some difficulties." "Difficulties?" Mark let out a bitter laugh. "That's one way to put it." "What Mark means," my father cut in, "is that the family is facing some financial challenges, big ones." "How big?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Finally, my mother spoke. "We could lose everything." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing it confirmed was different. "Everything?" Leo asked quietly. "The house? The savings? The retirement money?" "Yes," my father said, his voice flat. "Mark made some investments for us, investments that didn't work out." I looked at Mark, who was glaring at me like this was somehow my fault. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully, "but I'm not sure why you're telling us." "Because we need your help," Veronica said, leaning forward. For the first time in my life, my sister was looking at me with something that might have been desperation. "Our help?" "Your land," my father said bluntly. "The farm. We need you to sell it." The words hit me like a slap. "Excuse me?" "It's the only asset in the family that's not tied up in this mess," my mother explained, her voice pleading. "If you sell the farm, we can pay off the debts and start over." I felt Leo's hand find mine, his grip steady and warm. "You want us to sell our home?" I said slowly. "To fix your mistakes?" "It's not about mistakes," Mark said, his voice rising. "It's about family, about doing what's right." "What's right?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "What's right is asking your family to give up everything they've worked for?" "You've worked for?" Veronica stood up, her calm finally breaking completely. Judy, you're playing house on a patch of dirt. This is real life, real problems. Real problems for choices you made. We're family, my mother cried, tears streaming down her face. Family helps family. Where was this family loyalty when you spent years mocking everything we built? I stood up too, my hands shaking. Where was it when you treated Leo like dirt under your shoes? That's not fair, my father said, but his voice lacked strength. Isn't it? You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about every family gathering where you made us feel like charity cases. Every comment about our simple little life. Every time you acted like we were embarrassing you just by existing. Judy, Lily started, but I was on a roll now. And now, when your Golden Boys plans fall apart, suddenly you remember we exist. Suddenly we're family. This isn't about the past, Veronica said, her voice desperate. This is about now, about survival. Your survival built on our sacrifice. It's just land, Mark exploded. It's dirt and weeds and nothing. You could buy another farm anywhere. The silence that followed was deafening. Even he seemed to realize he'd gone too far. Leo stood up slowly, his movements calm and controlled. I think, he said quietly, we should go. Wait, my mother pleaded. Please, just think about it. We're not asking you to decide right now. Actually, my father said, his voice hard, we are. The people we owe won't wait much longer. We need an answer by Monday. Monday? I stared at him. You're giving us 2 days to decide whether to destroy our lives for you? You're being dramatic, Veronica said, but her voice was shaking. It's just property. We're talking about people's lives here, my daughter's future. What about our future? You don't have children, she shot back. You don't understand what's at stake. The words hit like a physical blow. The unspoken idea that our childless marriage somehow made our lives worth less hung in the air between us. Leo's jaw tightened, and I saw his hands clench into fists. We're leaving, I said, grabbing my purse. Judy, please, my mother called as we headed for the door. Just think about it, please. I turned back one last time, looking at these people who shared my blood but felt like strangers. I'll think about it, I said, but you should think about something too. You should think about what kind of people ask their family to lose everything to save them from their own mistakes. As we walked to the truck, my father's voice followed us out. You'll come to your senses once you realize what you owe us, Judy, what we've done for you over the years. Leo's hand was on the truck door, but he paused, his knuckles white against the metal. What we owe them? I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. After 30 years of being treated like the family disappointment, what exactly do we owe them? No one had an answer for that. At least, not one they were willing to say out loud. The drive home was silent, except for the sound of gravel crunching under our tires. Leo's knuckles were still white on the steering wheel, and I could practically feel the anger coming off him in waves. We pulled into our driveway, and I stared at our simple farmhouse, the place my family wanted us to sacrifice like it meant nothing. The evening light made the fields look golden, peaceful. Everything I'd ever wanted was right here. I need to show you something, Leo said as we got out of the truck. Leo, I'm not selling. I don't care what they... I know you're not selling. That's not what this is about. He headed toward the barn, walking with purpose. There are things I should have told you years ago. I followed him, confused. What things? Instead of answering, he led me to the back of the barn where he kept his office. I'd been in there 1,000 times, but he went straight to a filing cabinet I'd never seen him open. Sit down, he said, pulling out a thick yellow folder. Leo, you're scaring me. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to show you who we really are, what we really are. He opened the folder and spread papers across his desk. I leaned forward, looking closely at the documents. Legal papers, patents, financial statements, with numbers that made my head spin. What is all this? This, he said, pointing to a patent document, is the watering system we use on the North Field, the one I put together from spare parts. I read the title, Patent Granted to Leo Green for Advanced Farm Watering System. You patented it 3 years ago. It's being used on farms across the country now. He pulled out another document. This is the soil analysis software I've been working on, the program that helps us know exactly when and where to plant. Another patent, another document with Leo's name at the top. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to build something real before I started talking about it. He sat down across from me, his face serious. Judy, our patch of dirt isn't just a farm. It's a research and development center. Everything we grow here, every system we test, it's all part of something bigger. My head was spinning. How much bigger? He pulled out a financial statement and slid it across the desk. The numbers at the bottom made me blink hard, sure I was reading them wrong. The company is worth that? Green Agricultural Innovations. I started it 5 years ago, right after we got married. Used our land as the testing ground for everything. I stared at the papers, then at my husband. You've been running a tech company this whole time? A very quiet tech company. Most of our clients don't even know where the new ideas come from. They just know the systems work. But why keep it secret? Why let my family think we're just farmers? Leo was quiet for a moment, organizing the papers into neat piles. Because I wanted to see who they really were, he said finally. I wanted to see how they'd treat us when they thought we had nothing to offer. The words hit me like a physical blow. You knew all this time? You knew how they saw us and you just let it happen? I let them show their true colors. Yes, while I suffered through every family gathering, thinking we really were the poor relations? Leo, do you have any idea how that felt? Sitting there while they mocked everything we'd built, thinking maybe they were right. Maybe I had thrown my life away? Leo reached for my hand, but I pulled back. You let me doubt myself. You let me think we were struggling while you were sitting on all this. We were never struggling. Our bills were always paid. We never wanted for anything. That's not the point. I stood up, pacing to the window. The point is, you let me feel small. You let them make me feel small. I never wanted that. But you allowed it. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. There's more, he said quietly. I turned back to him. More what? Mark's company, the investments that failed. Leo pulled out another folder. He bet against us, against green agricultural innovations. The words didn't make sense at first. What do you mean? He bet against our company, put his clients' money, including your parents' retirement fund, on a bet that our company would fail. I sank back into the chair, the full picture finally coming into focus. He lost their money betting against us? Every penny? He was so sure that anything connected to simple farmers had to be worthless that he risked everything on our failure. My phone buzzed on the desk. Text message from Lily. They're coming to the farm tomorrow. All of them. Dad says they won't take no for an answer. I showed Leo the message. He read it, then looked up at me with something that might have been excitement. Good, he said. Let them come. Good, Leo. They're going to demand we sell everything. They're going to learn the truth, he stood up, gathering the papers back into their folders. All of it. What are you planning? I'm planning to give them exactly what they've been asking for all these years. His smile was sharp, unfamiliar. A real education about who we are and what we're worth. And then what? Then we see if they're really family, or if they're just people who share your DNA. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and realized I was seeing a side of him I'd never known existed. The quiet farmer was still there, but underneath was something harder, more calculating. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? I've been preparing for it. There's a difference. Is there? He met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd known him, Leo looked dangerous. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. They arrived like a storm, 3 cars pulling into our driveway at exactly 2 o'clock, kicking up dust clouds that settled on their expensive paint jobs. I watched from the kitchen window as they climbed out, my parents looking grim, Veronica clutching a leather briefcase, Mark adjusting his tie like he was heading into a boardroom instead of a farmhouse. Even little Tina was there, Veronica's 8-year-old daughter, looking confused and out of place in her perfect white dress. "Showtime," Leo said quietly, straightening his simple button-down shirt. He'd insisted on dressing exactly like he always did. Jeans, work boots, the same clothes that had earned him years of condescending looks. The knock on our door was sharp, demanding, my father's knock. I opened it to find them arranged like a special group, my parents on either side of Veronica and Mark, with Lily hovering uncertainly in the back, holding Tina's hand. "We need to talk," my father said without wasting words. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They filed into our living room, and I watched them take in the simple furniture, the handmade blankets, the family photos on the mantel. The same room they'd been in dozens of times, but now they were seeing it differently, trying to figure out its worth, measuring how much it could be sacrificed. "Please sit," Leo said, gesturing to the couch and chairs. "We'd rather stand," Mark said, his voice tight with barely controlled desperation. "This won't take long." "Actually," my father said, pulling out a folder, "we brought the paperwork to make this easier." He set it on our coffee table like he was serving a legal paper, sale documents for the property. "We've already had it valued, found a buyer. All you need to do is sign." I stared at the papers, then at my family. "You had our land valued without asking us?" "We're trying to be quick," my mother said, her voice strained. "Time is important here." "Whose time?" Leo asked calmly. "Don't play games," Mark snapped. "You know exactly what's at stake. Your parents could lose their house. Veronica and I could lose everything. Tina could lose her college fund, her future." "Daddy, what's happening?" Tina asked, tugging on her father's sleeve. "Nothing, sweetheart. The adults are just talking." "About what?" "About family," my mother said, her eyes fixed on me. "About how family takes care of each other." I felt the familiar guilt starting to creep in, the same feeling that had controlled me my entire life. But then I looked at Leo, who was watching the scene with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You're right," he said suddenly. "Families should take care of each other." Relief flooded my mother's face. "Oh, thank goodness. I knew you'd understand." "Which is why," Leo continued, walking to his desk in the corner, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about family." He pulled out a thick yellow folder, the same one from last night, and returned to the living room. "What's that?" Veronica asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. "Information," Leo said, settling into his chair, "about who we really are, about what this patch of dirt actually represents." "We don't have time for games," my father said impatiently. "We need a decision." "You'll get one," Leo said. "But first, let me ask you something, Mark. In your professional opinion, what would you say this farm is worth?" Mark glanced around dismissively. "Maybe 200,000, 300,000 if you're lucky. It's decent land, but it's not exactly prime real estate." "Interesting assessment." Leo opened the folder and pulled out a document. "What if I told you that this patch of dirt is actually the research and development headquarters for a company worth $50 million? The room went completely silent. "What?" Veronica said faintly. "Green Agricultural Innovations," Leo continued calmly. "Maybe you've heard of it. Your husband certainly has." Mark's face went white. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Leo pulled out another document. "Patent number 10847,392. Advanced Precision Agriculture Watering System. Inventor, Leo Green. Filed 3 years ago. Currently used on farms across 12 states." He set the patent on the coffee table next to the sale documents. "Patent number 1015347. Predictive Soil Analysis Software. Also mine. Licensed to agricultural companies nationwide." Another document joined the first. Should I continue? Because I have about 30 more patents here, all developed right here on this worthless patch of dirt. My mother was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. I don't understand. It's simple, Leo said. While you were all busy looking down on us, we were building something important. But you're just a farmer, my father said weakly. I'm a farmer who happens to hold a PhD in agricultural engineering from a top university. I'm also the CEO of a company that is changing how food is grown in this country. Veronica sank into the nearest chair. This can't be real. Oh, it's real. Leo pulled out a financial statement. Want to see our quarterly earnings? The numbers on the page made Mark physically step back. But wait, Leo said, his voice taking on a harder edge. There's more. Mark, you mentioned being familiar with green agricultural innovations. I might have heard the name. You did more than hear it. You bet against it. You convinced your clients, including Judy's parents, to bet against our stock. The silence was deafening. You lost their retirement money betting that we would fail, Leo continued. You were so convinced that anything connected to simple farmers had to be worthless that you risked everything on our destruction. Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The beautiful irony, Leo said, standing up, is that you didn't just lose their money, you lost it to us. Every dollar you gambled against green agricultural innovations went straight into our pockets when our stock price doubled. Oh my God, Lily whispered. So when you ask us to sell our land to save you from your mistakes, Leo continued, you're asking us to give up our life's work to fix the damage you caused by betting against our life's work. The front door opened, and a man in an expensive suit walked in like he owned the place. Sorry I'm late, he said, setting a briefcase on the table. Traffic was terrible. Everyone, Leo said calmly, I'd like you to meet Mr. David Wise, our lawyer. David smiled at the room full of stunned faces. I believe you have some questions for my client. David opened his briefcase with the carefulness of a surgeon, pulling out documents and arranging them on our coffee table like he was setting up for an operation. The sale papers my father had brought suddenly looked small and sad next to the official legal documents spreading across the surface. Let's start with the basics, David said, adjusting his glasses. The property in question is owned completely by Green Agricultural Innovations, a company fully owned by Leo and Judy Green. No debts, no loans, no problems of any kind. That's impossible, my father said. We helped them with the down payment, which was repaid in full with interest 18 months after the purchase, David interrupted smoothly. I have the canceled checks right here. He slid a document across the table. My father stared at it like it might bite him. Furthermore, David continued, any attempt to force a sale through legal means would be a bad idea. The property is protected under several farming laws, and the ongoing research here has government grant protections. Government grants, my mother whispered. Oh yes, Leo said. The Department of Agriculture has been very interested in our work. We're currently developing crops that can handle dry weather, which could change farming in areas affected by climate change. Mark finally found his voice. This is all very impressive, but it doesn't change the fact that we're family, that we need help. Family, I repeated, standing up. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Let's talk about family, shall we? I walked to the mantel and picked up a framed photo from my college graduation. Remember this day. I graduated with top honors in environmental science. You know what you said to me, Dad? My father's face was stone. You said, too bad it's not a real degree like business or law. You said I'd wasted 4 years studying dirt and plants. I set the photo down and picked up another one, our wedding day. And this day, when I married the love of my life, you spent the entire reception apologizing to people for my poor choice. You told Aunt Margaret that you hoped I'd come to my senses before it was too late. Judy, my mother started. I'm not finished. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. Every family gathering for 5 years, every holiday, every birthday, every celebration, you made sure I knew exactly where I stood. the disappointment, the failure, the one who settled for less. Veronica was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "We didn't mean—" "You meant every word," I turned to face her directly. "You called our life a joke. You said real life happens in the city, not in our little bubble. You mocked everything we built, everything we cared about." "But we didn't know," she sobbed. "We didn't know about the company, about the money." And that's exactly the point. The words exploded out of me. You didn't know, and you didn't care to know. You saw what you wanted to see, two people you could look down on to make yourselves feel better. David cleared his throat. "If I may, there's another matter we should address, the financial losses your family has suffered." He pulled out another document. "Green Agricultural Innovations has been tracking the bets made against our stock. We're required to report important trades to the government." Mark went even paler, if that was possible. "The trades were made through Summit Investment Group, where Mr. Mark Olson serves as senior partner. The total amount was about $2.3 million, representing the retirement money of 17 clients." 17 families, Leo said quietly. 17 families who trusted you with their life savings, and you gambled it all on a bet that we would fail. "It was a sure thing," Mark said desperately. "Agricultural tech startups fail 90% of the time. The odds were that you'd do your homework before risking other people's money," David interrupted. "Did you visit the company? Did you research the patents? Did you look into the leaders' backgrounds?" Silence. "You didn't, did you? You saw farming and assumed it was worthless, just like you assumed we were worthless." "We can sue," my father said suddenly, "for the losses, for damages." David smiled, and it wasn't a nice expression. "Please do. I'd love to explain to a jury how your son-in-law lost your retirement money betting against your daughter's company. The way it looks alone would be fascinating." "What do you want?" Veronica asked, her voice broken. "What do you want from us?" I looked around the room at these people who shared my blood but had never really been my family. My parents, who'd spent 30 years making me feel small. My sister, who'd turned cruelty into an art form. Mark, who'd gambled away their future on his own pride. And little Tina, sitting in the corner watching her world fall apart. "I want you to leave," I said simply. "I want you to walk out that door and never come back." "Judy, please," my mother begged. "We're sorry. We're so sorry. We made mistakes, but we're family." "No," I said, and the word felt like freedom. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated us. Family doesn't spend years tearing each other down. Family doesn't come crawling back only when they need something." "But what about us?" Veronica asked. "What about Tina? What about her future?" I looked at my niece, this innocent child caught in the mess of adult failures. Tina's future was never my responsibility. It was yours, and you gambled it away. "You're really going to let us lose everything?" my father asked. "After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me?" And it sounded harsh even to my own ears. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad, besides spend 30 years making me feel like I wasn't good enough?" He had no answer. "The meeting is over," Leo said, standing up. "David, would you escort our guests out?" "Wait," Veronica said, desperation making her voice shrill. "You'll regret this, Judy. You'll regret turning your back on family. When you're old and alone, you'll remember this day and wish you'd made a different choice." I met her eyes, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of my sister. "You're right," I said. "I will remember this day. I'll remember it as the day I finally stopped letting you define my worth." They filed out like mourners leaving a funeral, taking their demands and their sense of right with them. Through the window, I watched them drive away, leaving nothing but dust clouds and silence. For the first time in 30 years, I was free. The silence after they left felt different than any quiet I'd ever experienced. Not empty, but full. Like the air itself had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. David packed up his briefcase with the same careful precision he'd used to unpack it. "Well," he said, snapping the latches shut, "that went about as expected." "You've done this before?" I asked. "Not exactly like this, but I've seen enough family problems to know how these things play out." He straightened his tie. People show you who they are when they're desperate. Your family showed you, and now you move forward without them. After David left, Leo and I sat on our front porch, watching the sunset over our fields, the same fields my family had called worthless dirt just hours earlier. "Do you think I was too harsh?" I asked. Leo was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the porch railing. "Do you remember what Veronica said at our wedding about us playing in the mud?" Hard to forget. I knew that day that this moment would come eventually. Maybe not exactly like this, but something like it. He turned to look at me. "They never saw us, Judy. They saw what they wanted to see. People they could feel better than. But they're still my family. Are they?" The question hung between us like morning mist. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Lily's name flashed on the screen. "I should probably take it," Leo said. "She's different from the rest." I answered on the third ring. "Hello, Tootie." Lily's voice was thick with tears. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Lily, no, let me say this. I knew how they treated you, and I never stood up for you. I told myself I was staying neutral, but there is no neutral when someone you love is being hurt." I closed my eyes, feeling tears I hadn't expected. You were caught in the middle. I was a coward. And now, God, Judy, the things they're saying about you. Dad's telling everyone you abandoned the family. Mom's acting like you personally destroyed their lives. And Veronica, what about Veronica? She's better, really better. She keeps saying you planned this whole thing, that you and Leo set them up somehow.
We didn't set anyone up. We just stopped pretending to be less than we are. I know that. I know you. Even if I didn't defend you like I should have. Lily's voice cracked. Can you ever forgive me? I looked out at our land, at the life Leo and I had built together despite everything. You're calling me now. That counts for something. I want to see you, not to ask for anything, just, I miss my sister, the real one, not the version they tried to make you into. Come for dinner Sunday. Bring whoever you want, but leave the drama at home. Just me, I promise. After I hung up, Leo reached over and took my hand. "One down. Think any of the others will come around?" Does it matter? I thought about that. A week ago, the thought of losing my family would have scared me. Now, sitting here with my husband on land we owned completely, surrounded by the success we built together, it felt more like shedding old skin. "No," I said finally, "it doesn't matter." The next morning, I was in the garden when I heard a car in the driveway. My heart jumped, wondering if my parents had come back to try again. But when I looked up, I saw a woman I didn't recognize climbing out of a small car. She was maybe 40, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, carrying a yellow folder. "Mrs. Green," she called out, "I'm Sarah Miller from the Department of Agriculture. I was hoping to speak with you and your husband about your dry weather crop research." Leo emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a towel. "Sarah, you made good time." "The first results you sent were amazing," she said, shaking his hand. "We'd like to quickly approve the grant for the bigger tests." "Grant approval?" I asked. $2.7 million over 3 years, Sarah said, smiling. "Your husband's work could change how we farm in dry areas. We're talking about feeding millions of people." I stared at Leo. "You didn't mention." "I wanted to be sure before I got your hopes up," he said. "But yes, we're about to get very busy." As Sarah and Leo discussed research plans and timelines, I found myself thinking about my family's visit. They'd come here demanding we sacrifice everything to save them from their mistakes, never realizing they were asking us to destroy something that could help feed the world. The irony was perfect. They'd spent years calling us small, unimportant, worthless. Meanwhile, we were quietly working on something that mattered more than any of their status symbols or investment portfolios. That evening, Leo and I walked through our fields as the sun painted the sky orange and pink. The same walk we'd taken hundreds of times, but everything felt different now. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought about my mother's tears, about Veronica's desperation, about little Tina caught in the middle of adult failures.
I thought about the years of being put down, the constant feeling of not being good enough, the way they'd made me doubt everything I'd chosen. No, I said, and meant it. No regrets. Even about your family. They made their choice long before today. They chose to see us as less than we were. They chose to bet against us, literally and figuratively. I stopped walking and turned to face him. I choose us. I choose this life, this work, this future we're building. Leo smiled, the same gentle smile that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. Good, because I have plans for us. Big plans. Bigger than a $50 million company. Much bigger. He pointed toward the field stretching out around us. We're going to change the world, Judy, one seed at a time. As we walked back toward the house, I realized something had shifted inside me. The part of me that had always sought my family's approval, that had carried their disappointment like a heavy weight, it was gone. In its place was something stronger, cleaner. I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly the right person, doing exactly the work I was meant to do. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.